Brahmarishi Vashishta and Brahmarishi Vishwamitra, they worship Lord Ram. According to them, Lord Ram is like a bridge. And he's a bridge that helps you cross from this world to the other world, from the material world to the spiritual world.
जय धारीनाथ, हरे कृष्णा शुभा जी, हरे कृष्णा। हरे कृष्णा। हमारी ऑडियंसेस का स्वागत है। आइए हमें ज्वाइन करिए। हम आज क्षमा मांगते हैं, डॉक्टर बेबी हमें आज नहीं ज्वाइन कर पाएंगे, वो आज वॉइस रेस्ट पे हैं। शुभा जी हमें ज्वाइन करते हैं, हमें ब्लेस करते हैं। ये हमारे लिए एक बहुत बड़ी अपॉर्चुनिटी है और एक समय है ऐसा 1 घंटे का जब हम उनसे ज्ञान पाते हैं, क्योंकि वो बहुत एक्सटेंसिवली लिखते हैं, पढ़ते हैं, आराधना करते हैं। और अभी शुभा जी अपनी यात्रा से लौटे। तो शुभा जी, बिफोर वी कम टू आवर चैप्टर डेस्परेशन एंड मिसडायरेक्शन, आज का जो चैप्टर है, हम रिक्वेस्ट करेंगे आप अपनी यात्रा के बारे में हमें बताएंगे। यू बीन ऑन अ वेरी एक्सटेंसिव यात्रा।
Yeah, surely. I'm just putting on some earphones.
आराम से, yes शुभा जी, आराम से।
Yes. So, I just returned back from a yatra to the Char Dham.
Yes.
From the cold of the Himalayan mountains to the heat of Mumbai. It's been a very interesting journey and a very intense journey actually. So usually, the way I always describe Char Dham introduction is that it's a one-way ticket. Most people who go to the north, they don't come back. But in today's situation, we think of going and coming back also.
Yes.
So the mountains are very unpredictable. You can actually see the weather changing in less than a minute. Extremely hot 1 minute, and the next minute freezing cold.
Yes.
And we have seen this in the last 15 days, almost on a daily basis. I saw this weather changing. And on the mountains, especially in Char Dham, you're totally dependent on God. There is no human being who can make any predictions, no weather forecast system that works, and absolutely no planning works at all. So we have tried all sorts of planning, and it has failed miserably. And ultimately, you come to only one conclusion: that on the Himalayas, just depend on God, and whatever the will of the Lord happens.
Shubhaji, does it require a lot of physical strength, also nourishment, physical strength to keep going? And then the mind gives...
In my understanding, more important than physical strength is mental strength.
Yes.
I've seen 83-year-old people with absolutely, I mean, 83-year-old person, how strong can a person be physically, right? But I've seen an 83-year-old person absolutely fit and fine throughout the yatra and doing unlimited services. I feel that mental strength is more important than physical strength in such terrains, and the will to serve, the will to carry on in spite of all kind of inconveniences and all kinds of shortfalls, all kinds of troubles and tribulations. That is the only thing that can take us ahead in tough trips like this, especially in Char Dham. Luxury and comfort is the last thing you'll get. What you can get is a lot of solace in spiritual experiences. And the more you take solace in these spiritual experiences, the more you actually enjoy it, yatra. You know? So a lot of people who do not have the mindset of going on a yatra, the idea of tapasya is very strongly connected with these yatras. You know, I'll tell you something very interesting that might help you have a perspective on this. Why do you take all these tough trips, tough yatras? You know, I mean, especially across India, you have so many tough ones, right? There's Amarnath, there is Badrinath, there is the whole Chardham thing, and there is Muktinath, and so many Vaishnav Devi, and so many very tough places. It's simply this: when you get something after a lot of tapasya, a lot of hard work, you value it more. When you get something easily, you don't value it at all. Suppose someone finds a diamond on the street, there is a very good chance that you will think that the diamond is false. But that same diamond, you buy it from a shop paying lakhs of rupees, you will value it a lot. The diamond is the same, but the value is depending on how much price you pay for it. So when you go on yatras like this, you pay such a intense price, physically, mentally, emotionally, so many levels. You pay such a high price. Sometimes almost dying. There have been trips. There have been times, especially during the Kedarnath trek, when so many people who traveled with me, they felt they were almost dying. That's the price you pay for these spiritual experiences. And then when you do it, come back, you value it so much more. Same thing in life. When you put effort to get something, you value that a lot more. When you get it very easily without any effort, you don't value it so much.
Shubhaji, what keeps us going during a period of tapasya? What keeps us going? Is it the power of love? Because you can't do tapasya for swarth. You can't do tapasya with the feeling of gain or swarth. It has to be the power of love and surrender. Is that what keeps us going during a period of tapasya?
There are two things that help us do tapasya nicely. One is knowledge, and second is faith. When you do tapasya, knowing why you're doing it, knowing for whom you're doing it, knowing what is a result of doing it, then that knowledge actually gives you a lot of clarity. And therefore, whenever I go on these yatras, before people go to any of these holy places, I try my best to explain to them what is the importance of those places. It's called Gyan Chakshu. Before you see, you hear, you understand. And then when you actually have darshan, it makes so much more meaning and sense. Therefore, it is so very important that people uh, do tapasya based on knowledge. And the second thing is, it's not only knowledge that helps you carry your tapasya through, it is also faith. Because faith is one of the most powerful ingredients in the world. If you had actually gone to Kedarnath in the last 1 week, you'll understand what faith is. On one day, there were 1,42,000 people taking that trip to Kedarnath. 1,42,000 people. And it's a 26-hour journey up and down with minimum 6 hours of standing in freezing cold, 1 degree temperature. Imagine, and 1,42,000 people taking that trip without any complaints. Everyone knows it's going to be tough. Everyone knows it's going to be difficult. There are only a few hundred, few thousand horses there, and maybe a few hundred palkis there. Everyone else, of course, a few hundred people get to go by helicopter. But everyone else, more than 100,000 people, are just going to be walking 26 hours. So that's not possible without faith. So I have seen the greatest exhibition of faith in these last 15 days, and it's humbling. It's humbling when you see all these people doing such amazing things without a single word of complaint. That's what faith is.
Shubhaji, talking about faith from our chapter, Desperation and Misdirection, I was planning to ask you, starting from Sugriva and the war, but talking about faith. When Angad goes to meet Ravana and he puts his foot down and says, आप इसको उठाओ, उठा कर दिखाओ. He was so confident. But that confidence did not come from pride. That confidence came from faith. That confidence came from strength of prayer. That confidence came from his love for his Lord. Shubhaji, and फिर उस confidence को कोई नहीं हिला सकता. And Ravana did ask him, where does your strength come from? What is your source of strength? Your thoughts on that, Shubhaji?
So just to bring the story to context before I give the understanding, just before the war, Ram gives Angad the instruction to go and give Ravan the last warning that he should return back Sita, otherwise the war is inevitable. So Angad goes in and explains to Ravan that he should return back Sita, but Ravan is just not ready to understand. So Angad decides to demonstrate to Ravan a little bit of his powers, and he challenges Ravan that you come and pick up my feet from the floor. So he keeps his feet strongly embedded on the ground, and he challenges Ravan. So if you have strength, come and pick up my feet. So Ravan sends his son Indrajit first. Indrajit comes and tries his best to pick up the feet of Angad, but he fails. Then Ravan himself comes. And in spite of using all his strength, Ravan is just unable to pick up the feet of Angad. And then Angad says, I'll make it easier for you. He only puts one toe of his feet on the ground. And he says, just lift this one toe, that's all. Ravan has lifted the Kailash mountains. He has so much strength. And yet he was not able to pick up a single toe of Angad. And most amazingly, Ravan uses 20 hands. And in spite of that, he is not able to move the one single toe of Angad's feet. And that's when Ravan asks him, where did you get your strength from? And Angad says, I was chanting the name of Ram and holding the name of Ram inside me. Okay. Breathed in the name of Ram and held it within my body. Because the name of Ram was so much present inside me, my body became so heavy. Aham sarvasva prabhava mata sarvam pravartate. Krishna in the Gita says that everything in this world is emanating from me. He is the source of everything material and spiritual. Now, imagine if someone is the source of everything and everything resides in him. How heavy will that person be? Isn't it? So when Angad summoned the name of Ram inside him, he summoned the entire energy of Ram inside him. There is no difference between Ram and Ram's name. And therefore, when we chant the name of the Lord, It's actually you are invoking the energy of the Lord. And the energy of the Lord is unlimited. And with that energy, you can do things that are unlimited, that seem to be impossible otherwise. So that is the mood with which Angad put his foot down. Interestingly, Ravan, he didn't have that faith that Angad had. And Angad's faith was based on two understandings. One is his father handed over Angad to Ram, and he told Ram, Vali, while dying, he handed over the hand of Angad to Ram, and he told Angad, now onwards, he is your father. He told Angad, now onwards, he is your father. You know. See, for those who have fathers in this world, material fathers, they feel that they have some source of hope and protection. But those who don't have any father in this world, father represents shelter, father represents protection, father represents security and comforts, right? There are many people in this world who don't have a father. And for those who don't have a father, God is their father. They're so fortunate that they don't have material security. So Angad, when he was handed over by Vali to Ram, Vali told him, from now onwards, he is your father. And Angad, from that moment, he accepted Ram as his father. Actually, technically, if you see, all of us are like Angad in one sense. We're all shelterless. We don't have any hope and shelter. We may have material fathers, we may have material mothers, we may have some kind of material security, but actually, that's not the source of our strength. That's not the source of our security. You know. In fact, when you go to a yatra like Chardham, you realize your relatives can't help you. When you're on those mountains, even with your whole family is around you, they can't help you deal with the cold. They can't help you deal with the climate. You have to deal with it yourself, and that is when you realize that I have only one source of shelter, and that is God. The moment you come to that conclusion that God is the source of my shelter, you also come to the conclusion God is the source of my strength. And that is a major transition in your journey of faith. That is a major step in your progress in your spiritual path.
Bless Shubhaji. Shubhaji, can we increase the volume a little bit? A little bit. Is it possible?
Yeah, I will.
Yes, yes.
I will try my best to speak a little louder
Okay.
because
Ji,
I'm
ji,
having some serious issue with
ji, ji, ji.
my
No, no.
system
All
today.
blessed, Shubhaji. I was just wondering if it can be. Ji,
Yeah, I'll try my best to speak louder. Okay.
ji, ji, ji. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Is this
Shubhaji,
is it getting
yes,
better
this
now?
is, this, yes, it is. It is,
Okay.
Shubhaji. It is. Thank you. But it's just that more, you'll have to put in.
No, no, it's fine.
It's blessed. Shubhaji, taking your thoughts forward. Faith, can it be given to us? Because I do believe faith is there, prasad. You get it as prasad. It can't be practiced just a few hours every day for a few moments, chanting the name for a few moments when the need arises. It has to be a part of your being. It does develop, yes, but it has to come from within. Can it be given to us from outside? Ji,
There are two types of faith. Uh, there is something known as initial faith, and then there is something known as strong faith. So initial faith is something that has to be that you have to manage, basically, that nobody can help you with. So when you come into the path of spirituality with initial faith, and then you embark in the process, eventually you achieve another level of faith, which is known as nishtha. So the first level of faith is known as shraddha, and then the second level of faith is known as nishtha. So spirituality is the journey from shraddha to nishtha. So the initial stage, Shraddha is very delicate. It's very komal, you know. So that the initial faith is something that can also shake. It can falter. But when your faith reaches the level of nishta, there is absolutely no question of faltering. That's called determination. And at that level, no one can shake your faith, basically. So when you come to the path of spirituality with the level of shraddha, there you are exposed to sadhu sangha, to association of devotees. Association of devotees is it's like watering a sapling. Just like a small sapling is there, it's existing already, but for it to grow into a huge tree, it has to be nourished. And the association of devotees actually becomes that nourishment. And in the association of devotees, you develop very intense good habits. You get rid of bad habits, and um, slowly, from the practice of intense spiritual practices and spirituality, you come to a point where, so spiritual practices include knowledge development, they include discipline, they include rigorous practices, they include staying away from bad elements and bad habits. And then when you do this, it leads to purification of the heart. And when the heart becomes purer, then you develop nishta, which is strong faith. So it's a very gradual journey, but it's a very sure journey when you seriously practice the path of spirituality. So this transition from Shraddha to Nishta is what is called as devotion, what is called as bhakti, and it is what is called as progress.
शुभा जी, श्रद्धा से निष्ठा, लेकिन आपके पास श्रद्धा और निष्ठा का प्रसाद भी है, तो तकलीफें तो आएंगी बाहर से, छल कपट भी होगा, ट्रिकरी भी होगी, तकलीफें तो बहुत आएंगे. How do you then talk to yourself? What is the process the mind takes? How do you talk to yourself to stay firm in that nishtha? माता सीता के साथ वो माँ है और ये सब उनकी लीला है टू टीच अस. रावणा ने कितना बड़ा छल कपट किया, उसने एक ट्रिकस्टर को बुलाया और ट्रिकरी करी, छल कपट करा. And how in that Leela, Sarama played a role. So the protection came. The protection came. So taking that context in our day-to-day life, when somebody is completely practicing Shraddha and Nishtha, तो बाहर से trickery, छल कपट आएगा. How do you stay firm? जी शुभा जी.
So just to bring context to the story,
जी जी.
When Sita was in Lanka, at one point Ravan really gets upset and angry, especially when the Ram's army comes in, and he wants to break Sita. So in order to break her, he calls a very powerful mystic who has ability to change his, do mystical things. And this man's name was Vidyu Jiva. And this man, Ravan tells him to create a head of Ram and Lakshman, mystical heads. And when when they entered, they threw the head of Ram in front of Sita. So it was very, very shocking for Sita to see her own husband's dead, body, or dead head rather. She was shocked and she was bewildered. She couldn't believe that Ram came so close and died so easily, you know. And Ravan said that my people went and slaughtered them when they were sleeping in the night. He just wanted to fool her. And Ravan was trying to break her. But Sita, she was wailing and crying, and she was like almost losing her consciousness again and again. And Ravan was trying to coax her to marry him because she has no other option now. Ravan just thought that, if Sita marries him, then the whole game is over. Ram will just return back, without the fight, and everything will be saved basically. So now, when this was happening, of course, exactly at that point in time, something happened, and his ministers called Ravan back for an emergency meeting, and Ravan left, and those heads disappeared out of thin air. Sita was not able to understand what is true and what is false, and she was completely shattered. And that's when Sarama intervened in. And Sarama actually went and told Sita, "Don't worry, I'll go and check out what really is happening." And she said, "I'm very sure this cannot be Ram and Lakshman, because Ram and Lakshman cannot die so easily." And Sarama, who was Vibhishan's wife, she inspired Sita with positive words, and then she actually went and did inspection of what exactly is happening with Ravan, and then he came back. She came back and reported to Sita that absolutely none of that is true, and Ram and Lakshman are very much alive, and the army is actually preparing to attack and all that. So the essence of the story is this: Sarama is a Rakshasi. She is a part of Lanka. Sita is kidnapped and brought into Lanka, and in Lanka she has no friends. She knows no one. And in spite of her knowing no one, and in spite of her knowing having no friends, here is a lady who has come out of the blue, and she's going out of her way to help her. Of the many things we can learn, one thing we can learn from this story is, even in the worst of the worst places, there will be people who are godly. Lanka is a place surrounded by demons and demonic mindsets. In spite of that, you will find at least one good person there, one believer, one person who has faith, and one person who has a divine intervention, which essentially means God can reach anywhere. The most amazing thing is that we have a tendency to think that, some places God can never come because it's too much negative energy, too much, negative influence. But it's not like that. If God can touch a soul in a place like Lanka, there is absolutely no scope of, God coming in. Then in places like ours, in societies like ours, where there is so much of mixture of good and bad, how much more scope is there of finding God's connections and of finding godly people around us? Sita, in spite of being in such an atmosphere, she still had hope that there will be someone around me who will help. And that's what faith is, right? And the most amazing thing is that God can use anyone as an instrument. Anyone can be used as an instrument in his service. The most unlikely person that you think will never ever take up spirituality might surprise you by taking up spirituality. And I've seen that time and again. When we have a notion that this person will never take up spirituality, you will be shocked to know that person takes up first, because the matters of faith are very unpredictable, and especially with life situations, things change a lot. Those who are arrogant and proud, one situation happens in life that completely shatters their arrogance and pride, and those very arrogant and proud people become the most humblest and most devotional people in the world. It's just a matter of time, and it's just a matter of the right kind of situation that creates a transformation in our hearts.
Shubhaji, only grace can transform. Only
Yeah,
grace
absolutely.
can, yes. And grace is the most powerful force in the universe. There isn't a more powerful force than Kripa and Karuna. There isn't. And how it reaches everywhere. Those calling out for them, it reaches them. Shubhaji, another person in Lanka who tried, Malyavan, Ravana's maternal grandfather, he actually went on to say, "You're right, you're right. The unrighteous can never thrive in a tiff with the righteous. Harming the righteous is like harming the environment. The more harm you cause, it's like calling for your own doom." Ravana just did not understand. In today's time and age, can you please put this in a context? The righteous and the non righteous.
Yeah. Malyavant Malyavan was a grandfather of Ravan, and though he was a demon, he was a very elderly demon. Yes, really, really old. It's called Vayovriddha, you know, old age by age. There are different types of old age actually. There is Vayovriddha, there is Gyana Vriddha, there is Shila Vriddha. So Malyavan was very old physically. A lot of what you learn comes with time. When you're young, you don't learn many things that you would have learned by the time you're old. And those experiences of life count. What Malyavan had seen, Ravan had not yet seen. And therefore, Malyavan had something that Ravan didn't have, which is experience. And based on his experience, a vast experience, he was sharing something. It is so important to learn the habit of listening to those who have experience, because they speak things that you will never understand because they have never experienced those things. And therefore, it is very important and pertinent that we allow such people to speak, allow voice to such people. But when you feel that you know everything, you only become expert in shutting people's mouth based on your position, based on power, based on the control that you have, based on your limited understanding of what is right and wrong. So Ravan was expert in shutting people's mouths, and especially those people who spoke anything against what he felt was the right thing to do. And naturally, when Malyavan spoke, Ravan was upset. He was not happy. And, you know, Ravan, the moment he heard Malyavan speak that, he was really angry and upset. And he told him, old age has gotten on to you. Imagine talking to his grandfather like that. He said, you don't speak the language of the Rakshasas anymore. And he's saying, taking your old age into consideration, I've decided not to take your insulting words seriously. Now imagine how Ravan was perceiving his grandfather's advice. So um, when Malyavan saw that his grandson was just not ready to discuss even, and he was so arrogant that he was just completely obsessed with what he was thinking is right, Malyavan said, it's better to just leave. At least Malyavan, because he was a grandfather, he had the rights and rather the authority to just walk away. The rest of the people didn't even have the authority to walk away. They had to just sit there and listen to what Ravan had to say. But Malyavan, because he was a grandfather, he took advantage of the situation and just walked away from there. Sometimes experience is the best teacher. You give somebody advice, they don't understand, just leave it. Just let it be. They will experience it and then they will come to the same conclusion. It's like eating like this or eating like this. Some people have to eat like this only. Because they can't eat like this. They feel that if you're eating like this is too simple. So, for some people, it's better to just let be. Don't advise them. Don't advise them because they will not value your advice. It is very important to know when to advise and when not to advise. Rather, it is more important to know when not to advise. So, in situations like this in your life, when you come across very arrogant people, it's best to let go. So, here, um, in the case of Malyavan, though he was also a demon, here in Lanka, the discussion is always about what is wrong and what is more wrong. So, Malyavan is not exactly righteous, obviously. He was not righteous. He has done a lot of bad things in his younger days. But in this situation, he was giving the right advice. So, even from someone who's doing wrong, you can get the right advice. But it is up to you how much you want to accept. Because to accept advice, you have to be humble. Because receiving feedback is not easy. Receiving feedback is not at all easy. It's very painful, in fact, especially for those who are successful. I Many years back, I did a seminar for very successful people, and they're all CEOs and CXOs of organizations, and I called it as coping with success. Because even to cope with success, because a lot of people reach success to a particular level, with a certain attitude and certain mindset, once they reach that level of success, they are not ready to listen to anyone else because they feel that I figured out the way to reach success and I figured out the rituals that are needed to make me successful, and I know everything. And if somebody gives them an advice, they feel that I don't want to follow it because it might change my formula of success. So to get successful people to adopt, to become more better, is more impossible than to help somebody who is not so successful to become successful. And that's exactly what's happening here with Ravan. Very successful, and now not in a position to adapt himself to something better and bigger.
Shubhaji, taking this thought forward, Bali, Ravana, and then you will guide us, you will tell us the context in which it's written here. शुभा जी, बाली, वो बाली के पास गया, बाली ने उसको वो इयरिंग दिखा दिया, that in the past life you were Hiranyakashipu, but Ravana is hell bent on self destruction. He's just hell bent. What do you do when some people are just, they want to self destruct and they give it different names? Yes, Shubhaji, guide us.
So this is the story of Bali Maharaj, who is the king of the Sutal Loka, or the great grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. So Bali, he is a very powerful king. He was a Rakshasa, and eventually he pleased Lord Vamanadev, because of which he received the Sutala Loka as a gift, and he became the king of the Sutala Loka. So Ravan felt that Bali is a Rakshasa, so he'll understand his situation. So he said, "Let me go and ask him for help." So Ravan walks up to Bali Maharaj in the Sutala Loka and he tells him, "I need help from you." Bali asks him, "What help do you need?" So Ravan says, "I need." There are a group of monkeys that have come here with two human beings who are troubling me a lot. Bali said, "From when did you start getting scared of human beings and monkeys?" So Ravan said, "No, these are little special category of people and they troubled me a lot." And then Ravan said, "One monkey came and burned my city, another monkey came and spat on my head. Sugriv, he actually jumps up before the war and he spits on the head of Ravan." So he said, one monkey burnt my city, one monkey spat on my head, and a third monkey put his foot down. I couldn't even pick up his feet. So he said, these three monkeys have troubled me so much. Bali said, if three monkeys have done this to you, what happens when the whole army attacks you? So Bali said, why don't you just return back Sita? You have so many wives. Why don't you just be content with Sita? Ravan said, see, I've not come here for advice. I've come here for help. And then Bali understood Ravan can't understand it in this way. He has to be told in a different way. So he took him to this garden and he showed him this huge mountain of gold. And Ravan loved it. He said, this is exactly what I came here for. I wanted a lot of money to fight this war, which is going to last a long time. And he wanted to pick up the entire mountain of gold and carry it with him to Lanka. And he was not able to pick it up. So Ravan wanted to know, what exactly is this so huge and heavy? Bali Maharaj took him to the terrace of his building, and then from there, from a far distance, they saw it was not a mountain, it was an earring, one single earring made of gold. And Ravan was shocked to know that it is one person's earring. Ravan said, who is this who is wearing such a huge earring? And then Bali explained that this earring belonged to Hiranyaksha, who was in previous Yuga, in Satya Yuga, very powerful demoniac king, and the brother of Hiranyakashipu, whom Narasimha killed. So Hiranyaksha was killed in a battle with Varahadev. And Bali Maharaj explained that when Varaha and Hiranyaksha was fighting, Varaha gave one tight slap to Hiranyaksha, and this earring came and fell over here in that fight. From that time, this earring has been here only. So Ravan was amazed to see the power of Hiranyaksha. It's so powerful. And the Bali explained, my dear Ravan, you were only Hiranyaksha in your previous life. Ravan was even more shocked. He said, I wore a earring that was so huge. And Bali Maharaj said, see, in this yuga, your energy and strength has come down a lot. But the same Varaha Dev has now come as Ram. But his energy has not come down at all. He's a strange strength. So he tells him, now return back Sita, understanding this. And still, Ravan disagrees to return Sita. There is a very interesting thought to help us understand this. Spirituality is very simple, but it is simple for the simple. But for those who are very complicated, even simple truths, it doesn't register. For us to be able to understand deeper spiritual thoughts, you need a different type of intelligence. Material intelligence doesn't help someone understand deeper truths of spirituality. Therefore, to understand the deeper truths of spirituality, it requires a refined type of intelligence. Srila Prabhupada, who was the founder of ISKCON, once he was speaking to a reporter. This was on BBC, national television, and there was an interview going on. And this reporter asked Srila Prabhupada, what is your philosophy? Can you please explain to me in very simple words? And Prabhupada decided, of all the things to speak, he decided to speak a very simple concept, which is the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. The concept that you're not the body, you're the spirit soul. Very simple. I mean, in India, every kid knows this philosophy, right? But in the West, it's not such a commonly known understanding. So Prabhupada wanted to make it very simple for him and gave him a very simple analogy. He said, just like a car needs a driver, without the driver, the car cannot move for thousands of years. Similarly, the body needs a soul. Without the soul, the body is just dead matter. And just like the food of the car is different from the food of the driver, the food of this body is different from the food of the soul. Simple, he explained, in simple words. And chanting is a path of nourishing the soul. This man, he heard it. And he said, where did the car come from? And Prabhupada said, I'm trying to explain to you, that just like the car needs a driver, the body needs a soul. This man was not able to understand. He said, "Where did the car come from again?" Yeah. So he was just not able to understand what is the connection between car and driver and body and soul. Just not getting it. It's such a simple thing, isn't it? It's one of the most simplest analogies that you can understand. But because this man, he didn't have the right kind of intelligence, which is what I called it as spiritual intelligence. Such a simple philosophy, he just couldn't get it. Prabhupada explained to him 3 times, 4 times. He still didn't understand. So, spirituality is simple for the simple. But for those who are very complicated, even the simplest of things which are very obvious doesn't make sense. For Ravan, what Bali was saying just didn't make sense. Because Ravan had a lot of intelligence. He was very, very intelligent materially. But he lacked this little spiritual intelligence that helps us understand simple things, but which are so very important from a spiritual perspective.
Shubhaji, what do you do with people who choose to live in denial, who are always in denial, that their mind can't accept realities and even truth, वो अपनी कन्वीनियंस के लिए उसको डिस्टॉर्ट कर देते हैं. But what do you do with people and minds that are always in denial? जी शुभा जी.
Only time can help such people. In the Ramayan, we find 2 people who are exactly in this category. We find both Vali and Ravan in exactly this mindset. And at the end of their lives, when Vali died and when Ravan died, their wives, Tara and Mandodari, speak exactly this. Tara is speaking to the dead body of Vali and she's saying, "I told you so many times, but you just didn't get it. And now you're lying dead in a pool of blood." And she's saying, "Now, what is the point in even understanding?" Mandodari, she's speaking to the dead body of Ravan. She could not manage to speak to Ravan in his entire life because Ravan just didn't give her time to understand what her thoughts are. But to the dead body of Ravan, she could speak a lot. And if you actually see the end of the Ramayan, you'll find Mandodari speaking a lot to the dead body of Ravan. In fact, that is the only time you hear Mandodari's voice in the Ramayan. Imagine, while Ravan was alive, she didn't get chance to speak only. There are some people who just don't give chance to others to speak because they have so much to say. So Mandodari, after Ravan's death, she said, "I don't blame Ram for what is happening to you because you did this to yourself." And Mandodari was so sad seeing Ravan die like that. And she said, "You can't blame anybody else. Only you are to be blamed." There are some people whom we can't explain things. They just don't get it. And plus, the reason they don't get it is because they're too stubborn for their own good. They're too stubborn for their own good. So with such people, there is one thing that you can do. The one thing that you can do is pray. Pray that at the right time, intelligence, the spiritual intelligence awakens. And you will find it that these prayers are powerful. Like in the Shrimad Bhagavatam, we find the story of Kaliya. The wives of Kaliya, who are known as the Nagapatnis, they were so devotional. They had so much faith, they had so much devotion in their hearts. But their husband was just not there. He was just not able to understand. He caused so much pain and havoc to people of Vrindavan. And the Nagapatnis, what could they do? They tried to explain to their husbands, but he was so much filled with arrogance and he was so full of himself that he just didn't listen to them. And one fine day, Krishna intervened and Krishna danced on the heads of Kaliya, destroyed his pride. It is explained that as Krishna was dancing on the heads of Kaliya, every head on which he was dancing, it was like almost like a thunderbolt striking Kaliya's heads. Kaliya was on the verge of dying. And in that stage, Kaliya realized, "I am not great after all. There's somebody greater than me." And when he was completely shattered, his pride was completely shattered, then he became open to guidance. The wives of Kalia, when they saw him almost on the verge of death, they again came to him and they told him, "Now take shelter of Krishna. He is kind, he is merciful, and he'll forgive you." And that's when the Kalia listened to his wives and he took shelter of Krishna and he offers prayers. And the prayers that Kali offers Krishna are exactly the repetition of the prayers his wives offers Krishna. And imagine a husband who is so powerful but so arrogant. All his life not ready to listen to his wives. But when he realized that I would die if I don't listen now, then he began to listen. And then he became a very sincere devotee actually. And so in every human being's life there will be a turning point. So when life is normal and we are very successful and very arrogant, that's not the time advice enters our hearts. But people who love us, they're patient with us. They're patient with us during the time of arrogance. They're patient with us during the time of failures. And the Nagapatnis waited patiently for the right time. And when they saw that their husband was really humbled by Krishna's intervention, then they felt this is the right time to intervene. Actually, when you're very proud, your facial expression is very different. But when you're very humble, your facial expression is very different. The Nagapatnis saw the face of Kalia changing. They saw the expressions on the face of Kalia changing. And then they realized this is the time to intervene now. We all need intervention at the right time in our lives. If it is a little too late, we lose we lose the benefit. If it is a little too early, we're not prepared for it. And therefore the intervention has to come at the exact right time. Then it works in the way a expert physician gives you the medicine at the right time. And that's how spiritual advice has to be given. Just wait for the right time. Till then, pray.
जी जी शुभा जी, शुभा जी, आपने लिखा है इसी थॉट को आगे लेके जाते हुए, some questions can give us more clarity in life than many answers. But people who are in denial, Shubha ji, they don't even ask the right questions. How are they going to get the answers? जी.
Questioning is an art. When you ask questions with the mood of a seeker, those questions have great power in them. In fact, Krishna says in the Gita, Tad Viddhi Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya Upadekshantite Jnanam Jnaninas Tattva Darshana. Krishna speaks about how to approach a teacher and ask the right questions. So he talks about three things that you need to do with a teacher or a guide. So he says Pranipat, Pariprashna, and Sevaya. These are three words that Krishna uses. Pranipat means approach in a humble spirit of surrender. Pariprashna means approach, asking submissively. It's called submissive inquiry. Pariprashna. It's not just prashna, it's pariprashna. Pariprashna means submissive inquiry. And third is sevaya, means serve that person. That's when knowledge gets completed. This is called the knowledge cycle. So pranipat means when we approach someone who has knowledge, we approach with the desire to learn, and that approach has to be humble. It has to be a very humble approach, because only in if you are approaching someone with a humble approach, that's when you can actually get the right answers. That's when you can actually get because you're approaching the right mood, right consciousness, right? Pranipat is important because that builds the mood of the discussion. Pariprashna is even more important because uh, a lot of people ask questions with the idea of challenging, not with the idea of getting an answer, but with an idea of proving that I know more than you. So when you approach a teacher with a arrogant question and with an arrogant mood and attitude, you don't get the right answers. And even if you get the right answers, you're not in the mood to accept those answers. So pariprashna, submissive inquiry is important. In today's world, a lot of people ask questions, but what they do is known as absurd inquiry. Absurd inquiry means you ask strange questions that have no relevance to your life, that have no relevance to creating a transformation in your life. Every question that you ask must be with the mood of creating transformation, with the mood of creating a massive revolution in your heart, in your life. And then sevaya means serve, which essentially means you ask the question, you receive an answer, but for that answer to actually penetrate your heart and become a part of you, you need to digest that answer. And the process of digestion is service. Just like when you eat a heavy meal, you shouldn't go to sleep like that, isn't it? After a heavy meal, do some little bit of walking, do some little bit of movement so that the meal gets digested. Seva is the most powerful tool to digest knowledge. When you serve the teacher, when you serve the spiritual master, then you have the ability to digest the knowledge that he's sharing with us. A lot of people, they gain knowledge, they read books, they hear a lot, they gain a lot of knowledge because they don't do seva. They don't serve the guru, serve the great acharyas, great teachers. They don't get the benefit of digesting the knowledge. The process of digestion is not just a physical process. It's a very spiritual, it's a very deeply spiritual process. And therefore, it is so important as a part of completion of the question of the cycle of asking questions, basically. So Pranipat, Pariprashna, and Sevaya. And only when you do it in this cycle, you will get relevant answers, and those answers will be deeply transformative in your lives.
Shubhaji, to conclude this chapter, it's a very powerful chapter. To conclude it, a final question coming to my mind, a thought coming to my mind. You'd written to win was courage alone is not enough. You need presence of mind too. Taking your thought forward. To walk the path, you need to be very mindful. You need presence of mind. You need a resolve. You need a resolve to be mindful also. Ji Shubhaji.
Um, Sometimes the mind can make you a fool. So a lot of people are mind fools because their mind has fooled them a lot, right? There's a big difference between being mindful, that means someone who is having a fooled mind, or rather somebody whose mind is fooling them, and being mindful. Um, Mindfulness is a state of awakening, and lack of mindfulness is a state of sleep. It's called susupti in Sanskrit. The word susupti actually means, it's like lethargy or laziness or sleep, basically illusion. So when somebody is mindful, they're very aware of the thing that they're focusing on, and they're also aware of realities around them. Someone who's mindful is sensitive, and that person is really conscious of how his words, thoughts, and actions affect others. Mindfulness is something that makes us aware of what is happening inside and outside us, aware of how our words, thoughts, and actions create deep impact in society, and how we are responsible for those words, thoughts, and actions. Uh, e- Sometimes people become unconscious of how their words create impact in others' hearts. Someone who is mindful is very conscious of how it causes deep impact in other people's hearts. And as kids, we are very mindful actually. But as we start growing, we become very casual and mindless, literally. Because one of the most powerful things that keeps us mindful is when we continue studying and learning. The moment you stop studying and learning, you become very, very mindless, literally. And therefore, it is good to start developing new habits. Like, for example, simple things. Like, there is a prominent hand that is strong hand for us, right? And as we grow in our lives, we make that strong hand very, very powerful and use it all the time. One simple way of becoming mindful is start using the other hand for brushing your teeth, for maybe even trying to write. Suddenly you start realizing that this hand exists. you know. So otherwise we're just so unconscious of the other hand, of our weaker hand, that we just don't even realize that it exists. So mindfulness is simply increasing your awareness of things inside you and things outside you. And that awareness makes us grateful, that awareness makes us conscious, and that awareness makes us more alive.
शुभा जी, हमने ये कंप्लीट करा है आज, ये पूर्ण हुआ है. We are definitely missing the sum up from Mummy. We are definitely missing the sum up. She's going to be praying that she's with us now next month. We thank you for this, Shubha ji. अगले
Very much.
महीने जी जी
We
अगले
pray
महीने
that Dr. Bedi becomes all right soon, and she's able to join us in the next
Yes.
session. Her smile and her enthusiasm is
Yes.
so encouraging and so beautiful.
Yes. And I'm absolutely sure that she's watched this and she has made her notes. I'm absolutely sure of that she's made her notes. We are praying that next month she is back with us. And the chapter is Veneration and Humiliation. We are going to, that's chapter 6 of Think Big to Win. So we pray she's there to do the lovely sum up. Shubhaji, thank you so much.
Thank you.
What has stayed on with me is Shraddha to Nishtha. Our journey. सीखते रहिए, आगे बढ़ते रहिए, लेकिन जो जर्नी है वो है श्रद्धा टू निष्ठा. और समय बहुत बलवान है, लेकिन श्रद्धा से निष्ठा पे जाइए, पहुंचिए वहां पर. शुभा जी, हरे कृष्णा.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Always,
Very happy to be here.
Always such joy. It's always such joy doing this, spending this time of 1 hour and sharing your book. पढ़िए इस किताब को, पढ़िए इस किताब को. थैंक यू शुभा जी. हरे कृष्णा. हमारी ऑडियंस का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया हमें ज्वाइन करने के लिए. अगले महीने आपको मिलेंगे. जय धारी माँ. हरे कृष्णा. जय सिया राम. जय सिया राम. जय धारी माँ.